Hello, I'm Joe Bia. I'm one of the after-the-sales service specialists for the G-Force product line. Today I'm going to show you how to service the G360 swivel assembly that is used on both the remote applications and inline handle applications. What this will address is any electrical problems related to either one of those assemblies due to contamination and wear. So first I'm going to start off by removing the handle. First, to remove this inline slide handle, turn the power off with the E-stop button. Remove the coil cord connector. Now remove the 19mm jam nut from the swivel assembly. Then loosen and remove the 8mm shoulder bolt from the opposite end. Once you remove the shoulder bolt, you can separate the handle from the coil cord by sliding it up out of position. In an application where you have a remote mount handle, the G360 shown here is removed in the same manner. In this particular case, you'll need to also remove the cable from the bottom of the swivel assembly and unhook the swivel assembly from tooling or any other end effector you might have in place. Once you've removed the inline slide handle, the next step would be to remove the sub-assembly. To do so, you would loosen and remove the 24mm hex nut from the top of the unit. Also remove the Belleville washer just below the nut. Now you can separate the swivel sub-assembly from the inline slide handle. Now in the case of the G360 assembly, you'd follow the same procedure. Loosen and remove the 24mm shoulder bolt and Belleville washer in the same manner you did with the inline slide handle. And as you did with the inline slide handle, rock the sub-assembly side to side until it separates from the lower half. At this point, you need to determine whether or not you're just going to clean the slip rings in the sub-assembly or also replace the main bearing. The way to determine whether or not you need to replace the main bearing is if you notice the bearing seal is a brownish or reddish color, that means it needs to be replaced with the newer style. The newer bearing is part number 74221A. If you find that you need to replace the bearing, you'll have to order one through customer service. Now the next step would be to remove the shoulder screw using a 2.5mm wrench from the top of the assembly. Then mount the assembly in a vise and remove the lock ring from the top of the assembly. The easiest way to do this is to use a screwdriver or a combination of two screwdrivers to remove the C-ring. The next step would be to remove the nylon spacer and then separate the secondary slip ring from the primary slip ring. At this point, you can clean the primary slip ring using deoxit, which is available from your local Radio Shack or other electrical supply place. The best way to do this procedure is to apply a small amount of deoxit to the contact surfaces and then wipe it clean with a clean cloth as much as possible, and then apply a second coat of deoxit to lubricate the contact surfaces. This will extend the life of the slip rings and ensure that you maintain good performance from the swivel assembly. The next step would be to clean the contact points on the primary slip ring. These contact points are very delicate, so be very careful when you're cleaning them. Again, you can use a little bit of deoxit on a clean cloth and just touch the surface of the contact points to ensure that they are clean. If you find that some of the contact points are bent down too far, you can use a punch or small screwdriver blade to even them up. Again, be very careful. They're extremely delicate and they are susceptible to coming loose from the primary slip ring. At this point, if you've only done this procedure to clean the slip rings, you've completed that cleaning procedure. You can now reassemble the G360 assembly. If you need to remove the primary slip ring in order to replace the main bearing, you'd have to remove the hardware that secures the primary slip ring to the swivel sub-assembly. You'll notice that some units have more washers and spacers than others do. It depends on when the unit was built. Make sure that when you reassemble the unit, you put back exactly the same hardware that you had before. Also, it would be necessary to remove the nut from the connector assembly on the opposite side, the 19mm nut And once you remove that nut, you'll be able to separate the primary slip ring from the swivel subassembly. Once the primary slip ring is removed, you can remove the main bearing by using a small punch and hammer and tapping from the inside, and the main bearing will drop out. At this point, you want to replace the bearing with the new style, the 74221A bearing, by placing the housing on a surface, flat surface, and then you can just tap the new bearing in place until it is fully seated inside the housing. Replace the shoulder screw that secures this bearing and tighten it. Now take the slip ring, position it back into the housing, and first secure it with the 19mm hex nut. Then replace the hardware that you removed earlier using the same amount of washers as were originally in place. Tighten down the hardware. Place the secondary ring in position along with the nylon spacer and replace the C-ring. Spin the secondary slip ring a few times to ensure that it is moving smoothly. Now place the lower portion of the housing in place. Line up the connector on the bottom of the secondary slip ring with the connector on the inside of the assembly, and position the top portion of the housing this way. Make sure it spins freely. Then replace the Belleville washer and shoulder bolt using a 24mm socket or hex wrench. At this time, it would be a good idea to lubricate the O-rings if your unit is equipped with the air option. If not, you'll just have a plain 24mm shoulder bolt or hex head bolt that holds this in place. Tighten the 24mm shoulder bolt and make sure that the upper part is mated properly, moves freely, but that there's no end play or rocking motion back and forth. At this point, you can now reinstall the swivel assembly or inline slide handle back into your system. Again, the purpose of this maintenance is to ensure that you have good electrical connectivity between the main unit and the handle or swivel assembly. How frequently you have to do this really depends on your application. If you're in an especially dirty environment, you may find that you need to do this on possibly a bi-monthly or tri-monthly basis. In some applications where it's much cleaner, you may not have to do this except maybe once a year.